My name's Zach Goff. My father was in the Air Force, so I was born at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. My dad retired from the Air Force. He did 20 years. He retired Master Sergeant, and now he's currently a contractor for the Army at Redstone Arsenal. He actually just got done working on Operation Warp Speed for the Pfizer vaccination for COVID. Out of all the places I lived while my father was in the Air Force, my favorite place growing up was England. We got to go to multiple different locations every single weekend, such as Stonehenge, Buckingham Palace, and really get to explore Europe as a whole. So that was definitely my favorite place to live. When I was making the decision to join the military, one of the biggest factors for me was I had a lot of cousins I looked up to, and they were all Marines. And I was planning on joining the Marine Corps, and I couldn't get a guaranteed infantry contract joining the Marines. So when I talked to an Army recruiter, he basically told me I could get that in writing with airborne school and a bonus. So he kind of sold me on that, and I decided to join the Army. When I joined the Army, I joined under the delayed entry program. So I joined right after my junior year. I went to MEPS, signed my contract, and then I had to wait my whole senior year, try really hard to graduate with the help of my mother, and then I left for basic training 2 weeks after graduation. I went to basic training. I got there June 18th, 2008 at Fort Benning, Georgia. I immediately thought I made a really bad decision. Probably the first 2 weeks I was there, it was definitely like jumping into a cold pool. It was not what I expected from seeing in the movies, but as basic training went along, I started to get the sense of camaraderie and started to get a little bit of pride in what I was doing, wearing the uniform, and it kind of grew on me as the time went. So being an infantryman, you always have certain ceremonies that lead up to graduations, such as getting cross rifles after your 12-mile road march, or getting your blue cord when you finally do graduate. So all that achievement, it felt like really built upon me getting ready to go to airborne school and ultimately my first unit. My first unit after airborne school was Fort Hood, Texas, 1st Cavalry Division, 1st Brigade, 2-5 Battalion. I was probably one of the only people in my airborne class that got orders to a non-airborne unit. And I literally went up to the Black Cadet Airborne School and asked them where my unit was because it said Fort Hood. So I was a little discouraged for that, but I wouldn't change it looking back because I had an amazing time at Fort Hood. I got to my unit in the end of November 2008, and immediately upon arrival, I was told we were going to Iraq in a month. So I really didn't get any training. I got assigned as a gunner for my commander's vehicle and the headquarters platoon, and basically I went straight on leave and got ready to deploy to Iraq. My first deployment was definitely an experience. It was a lot of bad, some good, really good people I met along the way. I'll never forget going into JSS Sutter City, my first night. We went blackout in our MRAPs into the city. Immediately coming into our JSS, we started getting mortared. And I had no idea what was going on. I just heard explosions and I was like, what is happening? And I hear my squad leader telling me to run to the bunkers, so I just followed. On my first deployment in July of 2009, our battalion commander actually got hit by an EFP that blew his legs off. And on that day, the air was completely black. We couldn't get him to the cache any other way but by vehicle. So our entire battalion went on QRF and was tasked with basically just getting cars off the road. That way we could get him to the cache at Biop. And by the time he got to Germany, he was originally a 250-pound guy who was about 6'3". He weighed 100 pounds because they had to keep cutting up his leg because it kept getting infected. But he ended up living, And only a short 6 months after that, he was in a wheelchair and shook every single soldier in the battalion's hand as we got off the plane from our first deployment. So that showed me what true leadership is and leading by example. And this is coming from a guy from his deployment before this got shot in the neck and still came back and led a battalion and was there for us when we got back. So his name was Lieutenant Colonel Karsher. He actually went on to be the WTU commander in DC. So after that, before he retired, so I have a lot of respect for that man, and that was definitely a highlight of my deployment, was getting my combat patch from him. Things started to go south for me, honestly, while I was at Schofield Barracks. I just didn't know it. I started to have these periods of depression for no reason. Everything was going great in my life. I had just remarried. I was young and in love, and I would still get these bouts of severe depression where I felt like I couldn't get out of bed. And moving forward, as I went to Fort Myers, I had a bunch of different surgeries on my teeth, on my gums, and I was prescribed pain medication. And dealing with what I know now is being diagnosed with bipolar disorder, I was kind of self-medicating with the painkiller prescriptions, and I didn't even realize it until I started to feel withdrawals and sick when I went out to the field. And at that moment, I knew things were about to go downhill for me fast. I started to abuse painkillers daily, and to the fact where I couldn't get out of bed without taking them first thing in the morning. And I was a pretty big guy, bigger built guy than most guys in the unit, and I was starting to drop weight fast. I was getting out of PT, and pills are pretty expensive, so that actually led to heroin use. And that's when I really knew I wasn't going to be able to hide it anymore. I actually got called to my commander's office, asked what was going on. I told my commander and my first sergeant that I had been using. They told me I would get help, and they actually sent me to the ASAP program for our unit, and they got me into inpatient treatment while I was actually during active duty. When I started abusing the painkillers, I still had it in my head that I was just using this because I was prescribed. And it wasn't until times like I had to go to the field for 2 days and I didn't have access to them, and I would start to feel extremely sick, start to go through withdrawals. And at that point, I had to start using more and more and more, which I couldn't get prescribed that much. So I started buying prescription pills on the streets. Well, I was spending probably close to $600 a day on pills. So that is when a friend told me about heroin and how much cheaper it was. So that's actually how I started using heroin. When I got out and moved back to Alabama, I was with my parents. I really had nowhere else to go. My mom wasn't gonna let me be homeless. We had just dealt with the death of our son. I immediately started using the drugs again. I was using all kinds of different drugs, cocaine, heroin, whatever I could get my hands on. My wife actually was using drugs with me the whole time. And we would literally get drugs and go to our son's grave and just like sit in the car till 3 a.m. It was an extremely hard time to deal with. I was at my mom's and dad's for about 2 months before I started stealing money for drugs, just putting my son who lived there around all that chaos, and my mom couldn't handle it anymore. So she told us we had to get out. And we ended up going to live back in Greenville with Emily's dad for the time being, which was also very short-lived. And I ended up actually on the street, living out of my car, still using drugs every day. When I got to Greenville, I had some support coming my way. I had people at the VA like Stacy Reeves. I had Upstate Warrior Solution, all trying to rally to my corner to try to help me. But at that time in my life, I was in no position where I wanted to get help from anyone. I was still sulking, I was still self-destructing, and I didn't want anything to do with it. And I continued self-destructing until I found myself in a jail cell that August with some pretty severe charges and a whole lot of them. And life kind of flashed before my eyes at that moment. I ended up actually getting out of jail on bond on an ankle monitor after like a month. And within 2 months of being out on bond on an ankle monitor, I had cut my ankle monitor off, was using drugs again, fled the state, tried to go to rehab, got rejected, came home, got rearrested, and I ended up spending 3.5 months in Greenville County before going to court, where the judge sentenced me to 1 year of house arrest and 5 years of probation. The wake-up call for me was not jail. It was not the sentencing, because I was on house arrest for a year and I drank every single day. I was never even a big drinker, but I drank every day because I needed something to make me feel, outside of my own head. Immediately getting off of house arrest in 2018, I started using drugs right away. That was a short-lived time, but I found myself back in jail, and this time I was reaching out to try to get help, which I still didn't fully accept. Honestly, my wife went to rehab, and it was for the first time in a long time. I was all by myself, and I was so severely depressed. I was using drugs not to get high, not to feel good, but literally to feel like I wasn't going to kill myself. I mean, I was suicidal every single day. And I was begging my mom on the phone to try to figure out how I could get some help, because I thought of a way, but I wasn't allowed to leave the state. And it wasn't for a judge at probation who told me I could choose where I wanted to go. My probation officer wanted me to be court-ordered to a state-run facility and sit in county until a bed was open. And the judge saw my military service, and he told me that I fought for this country and I deserved to go where I chose to. And he gave me a choice, and he said, "What day will you check into the Asheville VA medical facility for their inpatient program?" I told him I'd be there that Sunday, and he told me if I wasn't there that Sunday by midnight, he put a warrant out for my arrest. The Asheville program is a 28-day program specifically set for vets. It's unlike any other rehab program I've seen. They treat you like an adult. You can have your cell phone there. You can have 4-hour passes 2 weeks in. You can go smoke. They take you on fishing trips. If you want to be there and you want to get help, they give you all the tools for success, but they also give you enough rope to hang yourself with. But for me, that type of program is what I needed. You could have put me in a program that had no walls, nothing. I wouldn't have left. I wanted to be there. But some guys, they're not ready, and that's what I had to learn. That 28-day program at Asheville was definitely my lifeline. One of the biggest things that that helped me move on with recovery and ultimately working on myself was going back to school. I decided I wanted to enroll and finish my bachelor's degree, only change my major in for psychology with a concentration on addiction, and something that I've experienced firsthand and that potentially in the future I could help people with. I had been working closely with Upstate Warrior Solution, volunteering, and I was really interested in the fellowship program they had. And I was just getting ready. I'd done all my application forms, and I actually got an email from about 3 different people, Charlie Hall, Stacy Reeves, and Robin Grable, all for a job at Favor Greenville for a veteran peer coach. And I immediately did some research on what a peer coach is and how that could be a job for me. And I immediately was interested, and I reached out to Rich Jones, the CEO of Favor Greenville, and I told him I was definitely excited and interested in the job, and he set me up with a job interview the following week. At Favor Greenville, I'm a recovery coach, specifically working in our veteran program. That's a newly formed program that we work closely with organizations within the community to kind of pinpoint veterans that need help with substance use issues and also mental health issues. We receive our veterans from referrals from these organizations and different partners we have, such as Heritage Health, Upstate Warrior Solution, and even the Greenville VA. This is a one-on-one coaching program that we do. It's basically peer-led, peer-driven to work with individuals from where they are at in their recovery. If my stories resonated with you and you're a veteran who needs help with substance use issues or mental health issues, or just needs someone to talk, we're here for you at Favor Greenville. You can reach me at 864-430-1257. Again, that's 864-430-1257. At Favor Greenville, we gear towards multiple pathways to recovery approach. That means we meet you where you are in your road to recovery and help you with any resources you may need.